Hello, and welcome to the new episode of Next Creators podcast. Today we have Jonathan Dunlap. Nice to meet you.
Hi, folks. Nice to be on the show. Thank you for Sasha for inviting me.
Maybe we can start by giving a brief overview of what you're doing in the Web3 space today.
Well, I'm Jonathan Dunlap, and I am the CEO of a new company called MintGate. We started in last July of 2020, and we built this platform originally for video that you could take a token, and provided that the user holds a token, you can gain access to a piece of video content. And this was at the time trying to solve a problem of uh, a lot. We were seeing a lot of tokens being created in communities and in DAOs, but these tokens didn't really have any sort of like practical purpose to them, or like you couldn't do something on the internet as you can do today by just owning the token. Um, and we wanted to enable the ability to watch videos. If you held this token, then you alone are able to watch a video. So we built this technology for streaming video content, streaming bits if you own a particular token. So we have this edge network that we built that streams content to a user's end browser if they hold a particular token with a particular wallet. But as we developed this technology, we realized that we could service not only just video, but any content online. We could proxy entire websites or video streams or audio content or podcasts, um, doing that all within one platform that provides value to the ownership of tokens. So broadly speaking, we're trying to be something like uh, Cloudflare or Bitly of crypto, that provided through token ownership, we're able to provide a very fast and secure network for delivering data to end users.
hmm I see. And when you say Cloudflare, you mean like content delivery kind of aspect of it, or?
That's right, content delivery, videos, music, websites, general purpose content access.
Yes. Maybe we can also go into a bit of your background. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in a small town in central Michigan. Um, Most people, when they ask me where I'm from, I say Detroit, but I'm actually from a very small town outside of Battle Creek, Michigan. Um, Actually, one of the largest Amish communities in the world is just a few miles from where I grew up. Um, and uh, yeah, I grew up on a large farm. We had native types of crops. We had horses, cows. So I really started my life way outside Silicon Valley. And it wasn't actually until I was, I think, 23 or 24 before I moved from Michigan to California.
hmm And were you even growing up had interest in technology or software, or it kind of came later in your life?
Oh, I've always was fascinated with software. I think my fascination started with software through we had no video games or video gaming consoles growing up, but I had friends that had video gaming consoles, had a Nintendo or a Sega Genesis, and those games looked amazing, and I wanted to play those games, but we didn't have any game consoles at home. And my father, who is a uh, he's a engineer, mechanical and electrical engineer. He brought home a, Commodore 64, and it had uh, several games that was included in it. And he allowed us to play some of these games on the Commodore 64. But while we were playing these games, he would teach us programming using the base Commodore Basic language that was built into the operating system. And over time, he would actually remove games that we could play and would tell us, well, you don't need this game anymore because you can program this game. You've got the capability of making this game now. So you don't need the game. You don't need this game anymore. Yes, very classical engineering family upbringing that I have. But that really trained me that, like, as I was able to uh, develop software, I could become more capable. and that I didn't need to just be a consumer and just consume and enjoy things that I could otherwise create and have the capacity for creating. And so I have very much that old world engineering spirit that I really enjoy being able to create things that I want to see in the world. Like there's nothing more passionate that I'm about that fills me with more joy than to be able to sit at a computer, think of an idea that I'm like, this should exist in the world, and then be able to make progress towards making that actually exist. To me, it's almost like magic.
Yep, it's probably closest thing we have to magic.
It is.
And then you made your way into Silicon Valley. What were you focusing at that time on?
I got into writing game engines when I moved to California. This was at kind of the height of the Facebook, the mobile, and social gaming apex of the industry, where it's $1 billion industry. And I started writing isometric and 3D graphics engines that would run inside of the Flash runtime player to be really efficient so that people with just their web browser and a Flash player installed could then enjoy a rich 3D experience like Farmville. Um, and at a certain point, I had such a knack of developing different graphics engines on the Flash runtime that I got hired in at Adobe for overseeing the Flash runtime team to help grow the technology of the Flash runtime player to support better 3D technology, better hardware capabilities, to leverage your GPU more, to deliver um, uh, more graphics capabilities into a web experience. And over time, I got to work with different browser standardization committees like TC39 to be able to take what I've learned through improving the Flash runtime to support better graphics capabilities in the browser and actually make them as a standard in the web standards so that Flash runtime itself wouldn't even be needed, that this technology was um, more readily available as a standard for people to use. And this is something that I actually pursued and helped pioneer because I'm a firm believer that to grow as a community, to grow as a society, to grow technology, to grow the internet, to grow what we are capable of producing, we have to be in this rhythm of developing out technologies that can be standardized upon, um, adopted into larger circles that other people can contribute into. Um, and this allows technology to quite directly evolve, very effectively evolve, because you get more people included in it. The software becomes open source, becomes more permissive over time. And you have this rolling effect where the software itself becomes decentralized, right? And I think blockchains, maybe I'm skipping ahead here, but like blockchains is that the inevitable future of software, where now it's not just software is open sourced, but the way software runs itself, the way that it actually is operating itself can be decentralized and be part of a global network. This is all trend in the way that we develop software, from large enterprises to um, many applications that are working in a coordinated fashion in a decentralized network.
That's super helpful. And I was kind of thinking about the same analogy as you were describing it. So when did you then encounter crypto and blockchains?
I think so. I've encountered crypto for since Bitcoin started at like being $1 or two. And in fact, yeah, I think I became aware of crypto when Bitcoin was about $1, and um, I've always thought it was really novel. But to be honest, it didn't really attract my interest up until I would say uh, I think 2018, 2019, just about there. Um, because I think while crypto is really cool for the financial aspect, of having this like decentralized money. I think that's incredibly powerful. But to me personally, I'm like, I I I, I like building things that do stuff that are more mechanical, right? That have an operation. That's not just a financial instrument. That's just the way my mind works. And it wasn't until I think I went to ETH Denver that I started seeing the beginnings of DAOs being forming and getting together. This is like some of the beginnings of metacartel. Um, and it was at that point where I realized that I need to focus my career on just building tools for crypto, because crypto wasn't just a way of writing decentralized or like representing value in a decentralized way and transactions, but you could build entire communities. You can build entire societies, perhaps even governments, on this technology. That's the point where like I was able to see that and believe that this is possible, that this is a future for this technology. Um, and then that's the point where I just like dedicate 100% of my career to just focusing on trying to build something that helps this technology grow and become more powerful.
And at that point in time, when you decided to spend a lot more time here in Web3 space, did you start with Metacartel, Raid Guild, those organizations, or was there something else you started with?
I did start with those organizations. I think Raid Guild was the first DAO that I joined. Um, I remember when I was at ETH Denver, I met a lot of the original members of Raid Guild, and it just I had some experience with uh, one thing that's always fascinated me are worker co-ops, where everyone in a company are co-owners in the company. I've been a huge fan of that model, but I've never seen anything like worker co-ops inside of technology. Like, I've never seen a software shop operate as a worker co-op, unfortunately. And here was Raid Guild, and here are these people telling me that they are all equally, or roughly equally, depending on their upfront investment, but all co-owners in this software club that's building software for others in this industry. And that just blew my mind. I'm like, what? Like, no, you're pulling my leg right. Like, this exists. This actually exists right now. Because um, this was like going from there's no I've never even heard of any worker co-ops existing in software to here's this next generational thing that's going to change everything that we know about organizing companies and people to produce um, goods and services in a radically new way.
What do you think was like preventing co-ops from happening? I know in US there were some co-ops, but they were like, as you mentioned, not technology co-ops. For example, like there is like Pizza Co-op in Berkeley that I know of, and I have friends who are like part of this. But like, what was the main thing preventing co-ops from becoming a thing? Is it the case that like kind of corporations and like Silicon Valley kind of model became dominant in technology industry? Is it like access to capital? Is it some regulations, or like was there some technological limitation?
All of it. I mean, that's a short answer. All of it are factors. Um, However, there has been co-ops that have had great success. Worker co-ops have had great success, and in fact, I didn't know this until recently that Visa actually used to be a co-op before they converted into a company. So this was a rare example of a co-op actually transforming themselves into a corporation. But there are large co-ops that still exist today. For instance, Bob's Red Mill. They have flowers that you can buy at many of your local grocery stores here in the U.S. Um, they are a local food co-op, and so we are seeing co-ops. And I know in the UK there's several different co-ops that are starting to have mainstream products in your local grocery stores and your local markets. Uh, but we haven't. But it's been difficult. The journey has been really, really difficult for co-ops because there has been no um, no shortcuts for building a worker co-op. And by shortcut, I mean if you're building a classical corporation, you can take an idea and you can dress up the idea and say and sell it to investors and say, look, I don't have the capability of maybe building this idea right now, but I've got this idea. It's going to work like this. I'm the type of person that can build a company to make this successful. You know, give me money for me to help make this happen. And this is the investment model. But through a worker co-op, it's harder to get started, harder to get bootstrapped because you uh, you don't have that opportunity to raise capital before that you have revenue that you can give out to workers that's actually part of a workers co-op. Um, so one, like the job is harder to get there. And then number two, a lot of the regulations don't lend themselves, particularly in the US, to being able to easily start co-ops. They're more difficult to start. There's more paperwork involved. Um, and uh, it's generally a harder path to take. So a lot of people don't take the path because why take the path that gives you less ownership and is more paperwork and more headaches to deal with. But I do feel that it is the future of building sustainable companies, sustainable organizations, to be able to have more people uh, uh, both being a part of and reaping their fair share of rewards from the success of their operation, as well as having an equal say in how the company or how the organization operates, how they conduct themselves, what are the rules and policies. I think this also lends itself to a larger conversation about companies being more ethical because there's more diversity of the voices internally on what the organization is doing.
Yep. And how do you think also like do we also have to go through this like mm, experiment and the emergence of best practices around governance too? Because like the more like kind of like the current model is more like command and control. There is like hierarchy. There are people making decisions. There are like other people like managed by those people who like kind of do things that other people decided on. Versus this new model is more diverse, a lot more people involved. Um, and then some people might say like, well, but then will they be moving as fast on decisions and things like that? So do you think we'll have kind of like a couple of years of experiments around kind of like figuring out how decisions will be made and how we can get efficient with this new model essentially?
Absolutely. I think this is the innovation of democracy. And um, I think that democracy itself is a technology. I think the idea of it is technology. And I think that the way that it will continue to evolve is, is um, I think I think it's important to look at our ability to deal with the world is a technology, and democracy is a tool that allows us to collectively look at many different perceptions, many minds that are all orientated towards solving a problem, and have an effective way of um, yielding the best outcome, developing out the best service that services people based off the collective intelligence of people. I think that even in 100,000 years from now, we will still be developing out new technologies that allows us to make decisions quicker, more efficient, allows us to convey the importance of decisions in a clearer way. I think this is something that we will always be continuing to improve, and I'm always excited to see um, incremental improvements in that cycle.
Hmm. And when you think also about the evolution of DAOs, you are part of, or you are maybe still part of Metacartel and Raid Guild. What do you think happened since then, like in terms of like evolution of various DAOs?
Hmm. I I will say one evolution that I just became recently aware of in a DAO that I'm a part of is in Compound. Um, and Compound has recently developed out their own DAO for their DeFi service and have a notion called autonomous proposals, which is really clever. So um, because their DAO is so large, you have to have a certain number of shares in order to um, post a proposal, as I understand it. And there's a fairly high level of DAO shares that you need in order to post a new proposal. Because if the threshold was really, really low, you would have, in any one week, there might be 10,000 proposals suddenly created, and people may not have oversight over which proposals have the majority votes on them, and that kind of creates a danger, right? So you need to have. So they have decided that you have to have a certain number of shares in order to add a proposal, so that there's fewer proposals going through their pipeline. However, it kind of sucks that you have to have a lot of shares in order to actually create a proposal. What if you have a really great idea, but you don't have enough shares, right? This is a problem. Well, they have this secondary market of like a secondary market of ideas, effectively, where anyone can create a pre-proposal, and users can delegate their vote to um, this proxy autonomous proposal. And once this proposal gets enough proxy votes on it, it will create itself all on chain as a proper proposal with the number of votes required uh, to uh, to create that voting proposal on chain in Compound. So now you have this really interesting decentralized autonomous way of collecting signatures for a voting proposal that then goes on chain, right? It's super interesting, and like it has mirrors of what's happening even today, right? Like if you're in a state and you want to get something onto a state ballot, you have to collect a certain number of signatures. I think you need at least 10,000 in the state of California, 10,000 signatures before you can uh, go through at least one step in a process to get something uh, put as a proposal to be voted upon. But here we've created a way decentrally to have this autonomous way to collect signatures and then automatically put those on chain to be voted upon. To me, that's just really exciting and a very concrete way that you can point to and say, here's an evolution of the democratic process being encoded into an automated system that makes it just easier, more effective, more secure.
Hmm.
It's real progress.
Yeah, it's huge. And also probably another interesting thing is probably it's not fully, yeah, it's always evolution, but like the interesting questions like who are the people who are like making decisions on some of these proposals to begin with, kind of the current model with Congress versus maybe some like experts in particular topics of interest you can identify through maybe like repetitive, I don't know, like prediction markets or something like this, where you can over time see who is actually like really knowledgeable about particular area of like economics or welfare, whatever, software development, whatever is important for particular decision, and then kind of like more allow those people to make decisions as well and kind of like let their voice be heard, kind of like more like meritocracy based on repetitive kind of like data points that you can see.
Yeah, representative voting, I think, is also really interesting, and that's also something that Compound has, where you can delegate your vote to someone else as a field expert to cast your vote for you. And I think that over time we are going to see uh, hyper evolution of governance systems, because now we can really play around with different types of governance systems, see which ones work, um, and it's kind of exciting from like a governance theoretical standpoint, because it's not that creating these governance systems are all pretend either, that they have no teeth in them, because all these governance systems are controlling financial assets. They have teeth, they have implications of getting governance correct, getting governments that ensures security and represents the wants and desires of the network. And we can try them out with real value and learn from it, and if need be, throw away the system and move to another system, right? And we can actually really have this a thriving ecosystem of different governance models, all learning from one another and co-evolving. I think we're probably going to have more innovation in governance in the next 100 years than we've seen in the last 1,000.
Maybe we can also go back to MintGate. So when did you decide to kind of actually like formally get started on actual company? Was it your first startup first of all? Did you do something pre crypto as your own kind of like startup or?
Yeah, pre crypto, I I built a startup called Dinner Table Chat, and this was outside of crypto, and um, it was kind of like Clubhouse in a way, but where Clubhouse matches people based on um, similar topics that people are interested in, right? Like there's now Clubhouse topics for NFTs, where people can jump in and talk about NFTs. Um, the startup that I had built matches people together on topics that they are least similar on, in order to stir conversation on people that have differences of viewpoints. So if you believe um, in if crypto is the ultimate way to improve all technology, all software, you might be matched with someone who believes that crypto is bad for technology and for human society overall. And you'll be matched with them for a private conversation between four people, two people for something, two people against something. And you have this opportunity of having this anonymous conversation about how you disagree on some topic. And I built this platform not as a way of like spurring people to like get together and fight, but quite the opposite. In fact, quite literally the opposite, to get together to talk about why they're so passionate about why you're passionate about believing certain ideas, and get people trained and exercise the skill in being able to talk about how they disagree on issues and come to appreciate what the other side sees, that even if it's just a kernel of truth, and uh, be energized and having a conversation that you can disagree on and yet still have an open and engaging conversation on things that we disagree with. So that was my last startup. It's really hard to grow a platform uh, in a classical Silicon Valley sense to attract millions of people to a platform where you are actively talking with people that you disagree with. But we have used the platform in over 60 schools worldwide, and we're actually part of some school programs in Austria as part of a state program. So it's that was a really exciting project I was a part of. So MintGate, I would say though that MintGate has been like more of the first like proper startup that I've created, where like I had a very clear goal. Here's a product service I want to provide. I want to create a company around this. I want to be able to create a community. I want to really build something, a useful tool that fits a particular purpose. So in this way, MintGate is like my first proper startup. Oh, I more consider like dinner table chat more of like a passion project service that I released.
What was the most kind of surprising and also challenging about growing your own startup?
I think I always knew how hard it like I could always imagine how difficult it would be to build a startup, because you're doing every role possible um, uh, to grow a startup. But I didn't quite realize a lot of the how difficult it is just to deal with the state paperwork of forming a startup that is not just upfront but also actively ongoing. It's a lot of the details that I had no idea took so much time into the running and operations of a startup. That part was surprising to me. The other part I think is surprising is um, the journey to find product market fit, to be able to work in that like having to feel out where the greatest need is that you're trying to solve for, and build that in such a way that really connects exactly to how people are working right now. That makes, you know, uh, that makes something easier, that makes your tool useful to them. You can design the next internet 3.0 and provide it to people, but if it doesn't actually solve an immediate real purpose that they're working with right now, today, this hour, um, it's not going to be very effective. So I've learned a lot about just working with communities and partners where just where they're at, and being able to, uh, in some ways, in a non-scalable way, develop um, useful tools for them, that ultimately help us grow, but also help them grow in return. It's very much like boots on the ground kind of approach.
And so, what does it entail? Like, how would you go towards product market fit while working with your community in a non-scalable way? What would you do, kind of day to day?
In some ways, what it feels like is, uh, you are a collection. Um, what it feels like is like you're a collection of consultants that specialize in a particular service that some other partner needs done. And it, and as consultants, you are advising, even if it's not really directly in your business model, but you're providing general technical advice, as well as producing or providing the technology services needed to solve a particular need that someone is having in that moment for a partner. And the trick is, you don't want to build everything as one-offs where you're not able to reuse anything that you build, but you want to be able to build and consult effectively at the same time as building a general purpose technology that you're able to reuse a little bit more of from every partner, every community that you work with. So you build things in a sustainable way, that one partner may need to token gate content with just ERC 20s, and that's it. So that's what you build first of all. But then another partner wants to gate some content with ERC 721s. So you're like, all right, well, now I need a general purpose technology that can gate by multiple token balances, and so on and so forth. It's this. Um, I feel that that's a really winning strategy as, uh, a technology startup today building in crypto, is really helping other really help if you're particularly a B2B strategy, really helping out your other partners at the same time of building a general purpose technology that you can stand on. Finding that balance, I think, is necessary for any great founder.
And how did also your role change day to day, kind of since early days to, well, it's still early days. I guess it's always an evolution, but like, what do you do now that's different from very beginning?
I think what's changed is, in the very beginning, I would prior prioritize larger buckets of time between different priorities. So I might say that, um, this week I'm doing engineering, and next week I'm going to just handle business operations and get through some legal paperwork and manage these partnerships and catch up on communication, and like try to have this like larger bucketed cycles. And I think as I got more experienced in working in startups, I've been able to um, better have these cycles where I can split up my day, where I can say, all right, this quarter of the day, I'm going to be doing this. I'm just going to be doing engineering and just engineering. I'm going to focus and I'm going to get stuff done in these 4 hours. But then that leaves me open to this next 3 or 4 hours to, focus on just really being present, talking to my partners, talking to the community, hearing feedback, collecting information, writing it down, being a good note taker. It's finding rhythm that I've gotten better at. And I feel that I can continue getting better at is having a sense of um, cyclic rhythm throughout the day, where I toggle between the my general priorities as running a startup.
Yeah, so it's a lot of context switching, and there is like a challenge, but you like become better and better over time at switching effectively across those things.
It's all about knowing how much time you need in each cycle to be at your optimum best. You know, like if I context switch too much, I wouldn't be able to be really effective at engineering because I need at least an hour just to get up to speed in engineering. Like I've been engineering since, I was 14 or 15 years old, but I still need like an hour sitting down to get comfortable writing code, getting into the mindset of like, what am I doing? Where are all the files I need to work with? But then I'm like at my peak speed at a certain point. So I need to give myself enough time to be at my peak self to be productive before I context switch. But I need to context switch because there's people waiting on me to get communication back from me. There's people that need my help that I need to focus priority on. Um, so it's finding that rhythm. And I think uh, being sensitive to developing a rhythm is one of the most important skills as a founder.
And also, what do you think about like recruiting in the space? Like, I personally feel like the space is notoriously kind of hard to penetrate. There is no like single go-to resource for like education. The space is also dominated by like speculation. Like there's like, maybe like a couple hundred founders, maybe 500, 600 founders, and yet like tens of millions of people who like look at the prices instead. So like the rate of talent entering the space is relatively slow. It's like feels like early days. Like were you able to effectively kind of also delegate some of the work, like recruit people and delegate some of the work, or do you feel like it is a challenge indeed, and also like how do you kind of work with this?
I'm glad you asked this question. I think delegation is so incredibly key, especially in this industry, because um, there's no tome of knowledge that you're going to find that's going to tell you exactly what you need to do in the spot that you're doing it, particularly in this industry that's changing almost by the day. Everything's new. Everything's almost feels like it's for the first time. So you need as many people involved and to be able to delegate to as many people as you can, as you safely can, to make sense of what's going on, to get other people's opinions, feedback, to orientate yourself. I think it's critically important to delegate effectively. I think one of the number one reasons why I see a lot of crypto startups fail is uh, often boils down to inability to delegate technical tasks to others in a community effectively, or, and it's not even technical tasks, just being able to delegate, be a good leader, and helping to ensure that you're not the one that is doing everything at the end of the day, because it becomes too fragile. You get sick, and you may have to like be offline for a few days. In the meantime, your whole company grinds to a halt because everything was resting on your shoulders. It's not sustainable. It's just not. And I think the most powerful companies are the ones in which everyone builds up one another and is able to delegate to one another in kind of a fluid fashion. So everyone's kind of familiar with the operations of everyone else because everyone's getting a general exposure. And it might, in some ways, like it has its own rhythm and pacing that you have to get used to operating in this fashion. But I think it ultimately creates much stronger, much more resilient startups, even when you're starting at a small, even when you have a handful of founders that you're working with. I think that it creates strength over time to be able to have an effective delegation between your crew.
And as you also worked in Silicon Valley, in Adobe, and many other places, started your own passion project. What were some of the things that were useful from that world, from like Silicon Valley world, that you took into this new world? But also, what are the new things like, such as like Web3 native kind of thinking, which is probably very different, kind of like does not like as much like organizational structure or being like as data driven, a lot more fluid in a sense. I feel like. So how would you like reconcile those two kind of like mindsets, and also like what were the skill sets that were useful, but also like what are the things that maybe like obsolete in this new world?
I think one of the things I took from Silicon Valley that translated really well is having formal communications to convey ideas. I Having formal communication channels and formats and structure. Um, One of the things that became uh, really popular in the last couple of years in California tech startups is this idea of uh, uh, RFCs, um, and which are stands for I think it's request for comments, and it's this document about some idea that you articulate this broad level idea that you have and like the pros and cons and why you have it and why you think it's important to introduce do the work to fulfill this idea. And then you could pass it around to your coworkers, colleagues, and have them digest this some new improvement that you're proposing, offer their feedback, and maybe they want to add to your document or add a comment to your document. And if you do this enough, um, the idea almost gets its own legs. It is you're able to get enough information to make it tangible, actionable, and then get that prioritized and actually get that onto the backlog to get built. And I'm seeing a lot of DAOs starting to move, adopting this process too, which is like having a formal template to formalize the ideas that you want to put together. Because even though you could be a DAO and very decentralized or Web3 decentralized startup, you're ultimately working with a lot of different people, often remotely, that and you're all building something complicated. You need a way to be able to really articulate uh, what progress means and what are the actual tangible steps to get there. Um, so I think that's one of the big takeaways from big tech companies is like bringing this RFC process and making it formal, even within Web3 and DAO communities.
And also maybe we can come back a little bit to your product market fit. What were the kind of takeaways? What did you find as your primary customers for MintGate going through this experience?
So to be clear, we're still in the early days of MintGate. I think that um, we are still discovering product market fit. We're still discovering which communities are best served, taking um, uh, content that they've built for just their community, and then gaining access to that content using tokens. Right now, we are working with um, kind of two different marketplaces. One is working with different NFT marketplaces that uh, they allow users to generate NFTs and sell NFTs, and we are providing a value as a um, as a partner to provide adding protected content to the NFTs being generated on their platform. And this way, they can a lot of these NFT marketplaces can differentiate themselves. That they're not just providing exclusive artwork that users can access, but they could also gate access to websites or video content or a Zoom link. And uh, it's not just link sharing, but also like if you're sharing a video, there's no way for users to reshare out that video on Twitter or outside the network. It's all being streamed securely through the network. So I think that's the basic kind of core of it is working. Well, one hand, so one marketplace is working with NFT marketplaces. The other side is we're working with brands that already have exclusive content. Um, and moving that content into crypto, creating NFTs, and then allowing fans to access behind the scenes video content um, or exclusive discounts uh, using our this general purpose technology that we've developed. So that's our two main markets that we're focused on.
And I was wondering, so would you direct people to find more information about MintGate? Is it your Discord or is it the website? Like for listeners who like hearing about MintGate for the first time, where would you direct them?
It really depends on the community that you are best that best suits you. We have a Discord community that which we all hack on every single day. It's how our team communicates to one another. Um, if you want to just learn more about us, you can visit us at mintgate.io. And on the website, you'll find our Discord. If you want to just see what's new and hear about the new technology that our team is rolling out, you can subscribe to our Twitter feed. And that's also just mintgate_io.
Nice. And last question I had is for somebody who is like maybe listening and curious about the space, but didn't quite jump into the space, maybe has some reservations or skeptical in one way or another. What kinds of things would you mention for people who are considering crypto but not quite there?
That's a really open-ended question because it depends on what's, for one reason or another, you're hearing about crypto because you have some interest in it. If you're listening to this podcast, there was something that prompted you to have curiosity into trying to figure out what this is all about. I think what I can best provide insight into is just feeling out what is it about crypto that piques your curiosity. Is it just the technology? Is it the communities? Is it about new ways in which people can operate together? Is it new ways to generate value, like in the DeFi industry? It's To get into crypto in some ways is to understand what you want out of technology, right? Because crypto is just a tool. It's a new hammer. It's a very powerful hammer, but it's a new hammer. What you do with the hammer is going to be the most important aspect of using crypto. And I think for people coming into the industry, here's a really powerful hammer. It's going to be used and become more important as time goes on. If you want to engage with this technology in a meaningful way, find new ways of improving it, um, learn to understand what is it about the technology that excites you the most. What aspect of it resonates with you, and then focus on that because there's a lot to learn, and gosh, it feels like every day the field expands. I was just gone for a week on vacation to visit family, and I come back and I feel like half the industry has changed just in a few days of being gone.
That's right.
I would say that's the most difficult part of crypto is that it grows so quickly.
Yep, keeping up is like impossible, probably.
That's right,
Well, thank you for coming today. That was fascinating conversation.
Sasha. Thank you so much for having me. If anyone is curious to reach out to me directly, you can find me at Jadbox on Twitter. That's JADBOX. And my same screen name on Telegram if you want to reach out to me there. Thank you so much again.